Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Thea and in today's video we are going to set up February in my bullet journal. Before that, let's quickly flip through my January setup so you can see how I ended up using these spreads. I really like this theme and the colors that I chose. As you can see, my monthly review isn't filled in yet, and that's because I like to write it on the last day of the month. The empty spread is for the last weekly spread of January, which I haven't set up yet. Anyway, as you saw from the intro, my theme this month is love letters. First I cut out a Dutch door so it will be easier to see that the illustration is in the center of the page. I also cut out tabs to the Dutch door as I really liked how those turned out last month. After the Dutch door was ready, I started making the envelope for this cover page. Notebook Therapy kindly gifted to me some products that I wanted to use in this setup. One of those products was the Maple Dreams mixed scrapbook paper pack. For the envelope I chose this brown paper that reminds me of craft paper, and for the envelope I needed to cut out a square, so I measured the width of the paper first and marked down where I should cut it. Then I started folding the envelope and used another piece of paper to make sure that the folds would be even. In this process you will just fold in each corner to the center of the paper. After that we will cut out the excess so the envelope is easier to fold. Here you can see the little triangles that overlap when you fold the paper, and those are the pieces that we will cut out. Making this envelope was a new thing for me as I usually just draw in my bullet journal. I watched some envelope folding tutorials, but I still struggled a little bit, as you can see. I decided that I want the envelope to be more like a rectangle than a square, so I folded the bottom part again to make it a bit smaller. Then I cut out the excess again so the envelope wouldn't be very chunky. After cutting out the pieces, I made sure that the envelope folds correctly and also folded the middle corner. When I was happy with the envelope, I started gluing the sides together with a glue roller. I actually had never used this before, and I must say that I'm not going to be using glue sticks anymore. The glue roller was a lot quicker to use and wasn't as messy because you can control better where you apply it. If I accidentally applied that to my bullet journal, I could just rub it off and it didn't leave any marks on the paper. Anyway, after the gluing part, I decided to cut the top part of the envelope because I didn't really need it. Then I just glued the envelope to my bullet journal and also made sure that I didn't accidentally glue it shut. Now that the envelope was ready, I moved on to decorating the background. I decided to draw some flowers and leaves because I thought they would fit really well to this theme and also the Valentine's Day. I had this letter theme in my mind for a few months now, and I thought it would be perfect for February. I have seen a lot of themes like this, but I try to put my own twist to it and make it more three-dimensional. There wasn't any particular picture that I was inspired by, and it's kinda hard to name any creators that inspired me because I have seen so many versions of this theme. However, I have been really inspired by Bujo for treats, as she makes beautiful scrapbook style spreads in her bullet journal. I will leave a link to her Instagram in the description box so you can check out her account. Scrapbooking was something that I have never tried out in my bullet journal because drawing is more of my thing. I don't know if you can call this a scrapbook theme, but I tried out some small elements from that style. Anyway, after I drew all the flowers, I started making the letter inside of the envelope. I decided to use this very textured paper from the Notebook Therapy paper pack, as I like how you can see the flowers through it. I first measured how much paper I will need, and then I added some pencil marks so I know where I should cut the paper. This also helps to cut straight lines, which I always struggle with. That's probably why I didn't want to cut pages in my bullet journal before. After I cut out the letter piece, I made sure that it would fit inside the envelope. Then I moved that aside so I can color in the flower doodles. As always, I have listed all the supplies that I use in the description box, so make sure to check that out. For the coloring, I used Tombow dual brush pens and Crayola supertips. This green Tombow shade is a 192, and that's actually the one that I use the most often for coloring green leaves. I decided to color in only the right side of the flower petals so they would look more three-dimensional. To make the coloring process a bit faster, I colored the rest of the leaves instead of coloring in the flowers one by one. That way I don't have to switch between the different pens as much. For the little flowers I used Tombow 977, which is a warm brown color. After I had colored in all the doodles, I started to add white highlights with Jelly Roll. If you have been watching my videos, you know that I don't usually skip this step, as I like to add quite a lot of details to my illustrations. I think the white highlights made the flowers look more delicate and not as colorful, which I really liked. I added the highlights on the right side of each petal, so it would look like the light is coming from the right side. If you want to add highlights to your illustrations, I recommend thinking about where the light is coming from. If you add the highlight to random places, it might not look very realistic. Because the white paper that I chose for the letter is very textured, you can't really write on it with the brush pens. Textured paper can fray your pen, so I decided to cut out some smooth white copy paper and glue that on the top of the textured paper. I think this was a good choice, and I like how the textured paper gives a frame to the actual letter. Next I sketched out the header so it would be in the center of the letter. I always like to sketch everything before using pens, because then you can make some changes and make sure that you like the layout. I used a Tombow fudenosuke hardship pen for the lettering as always. By the way, I recently posted a hand lettering tutorial, so go check that out, especially if you are a beginner and want to know my tips. Anyway, I also decided to use stamps for the header because I thought it would fit this theme very well. These stamps were also gifted to me by Notebook Therapy, and you can use my affiliate code TNBujo to get 10% off. I don't own an ink pad because I don't use stamps very often. Because of that, I used a black brush pen to color the stamps, and that worked quite well. It's a bit more time consuming, so I'm definitely considering getting ink pad in the future. Next I added some white details to the envelope because you couldn't really see the folds and it was looking a bit flat. I didn't sketch this beforehand, so I made a mistake, which you will see soon. Few years ago I would have been more upset about this mistake, but now I've really got used to it as I make mistakes all the time when I'm bullet journaling. Luckily this was something that was easy to fix. I just went over the white gel pen with a light brown brush pen that was close to the color of the envelope. Then I decided to cut a little piece out of the letter so you can see the flowers better. Now that the cover page is ready, we are moving on to the quote page. The quote that I chose goes like this: make someone smile every day, but never forget you are someone too. For some reason, this quote really resonated with me. I've always been a people pleaser, but luckily I have learned to keep boundaries and say no to things I'm not comfortable with. It's something that I'm still working on though, as these things are really hard to change. I think this quote is a good reminder that you shouldn't forget to be kind to yourself, and you can easily lose yourself or your own happiness while trying to make other people happy. It's not selfish to take care of your own happiness, even though I sometimes feel like that. After all, you live with yourself every day and you can't please everyone. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts or experiences about this topic, or if this is something that you have been working on too. For the decorations, I added some washi tape in the same way as I did last month. The washi tapes I'm using in this setup are from Notebook Therapy Warm Neutral Washi Tape collection. I think this color matched really well with my flower doodles. For the tabs, I added this cozy washi tape with a pretty pattern, as I thought it would make the cover page more interesting. I also added the washi tape on the other side, but my camera stopped recording. It's basically the same process though, as you just saw. Now that the cover page is finally ready, we can move on to the monthly spread. I started off by writing the title with the same Tombow fudenosuke pen that I used earlier as well. For my calendar, I'm going to be using the same one-page layout because I don't really need much writing space. I used light brown color for the boxes, so you can see very well if my lines get shaky. Anyway, I thought I would talk about my future plans with you, as I have explained how I make this spread in the previous videos. I have talked about this a little bit in my previous videos, but I graduated from university last year and have been struggling with my career path after that. For those of you who are new here, I studied elementary teacher education, but I don't want to be a teacher, at least for now. At the moment I don't have a full-time job, so I have time to focus on content creation, and that kinda is like my job. I feel like society gives me pressure to have a real job, especially because I just graduated. I just don't know what that real job would be yet, and to be honest, I would love to try being a full-time artist. One of my goals this year is to open my own little shop where I could sell digital versions of my bullet journal spreads and maybe even some physical stickers. It's a lot of work though, and as a perfectionist and someone who procrastinates, I have been just dreaming of that instead of actually working on it. I also have to still figure out how I would make the digital bullet journal spreads and decide which platform I will use for the shop. There are so many options and decisions to make, so I feel a bit overwhelmed, but I hope taking some small action steps will help. Hopefully I will be able to open the shop this year, but I don't know about the schedule yet. I will definitely keep you updated. Do you have any goals for this year or just the month of February? I would love to hear about them, and maybe we can encourage each other to achieve our goals as well. And now back to the spread. I'm making my one line a day spread, and I decided to use the same layout as I did last month. I kept this page pretty simple and added just a little flower doodle next to the header. I wanted to cut Dutch door to this spread as well, so you can see the tabs when you are looking at my cover page. Before, I never cut any pages when I was setting up my bullet journal because I felt like I was wasting paper. About a year ago, I tried out Dutch door weeklies for the first time because I was really busy with writing my master's thesis and they saved a lot of time. Thanks to that experiment, I wasn't as afraid of cutting my journal anymore, and now I really love making Dutch doors. Cutting just a tiny piece of paper like I did here can give a really lovely touch to this spread in my opinion. Anyway, I added the same washi tape to this tab as well. I first thought I would add a different washi to each tab, but that would have looked a little bit too busy, so I decided to use the same one for all of them. I also wanted to decorate the edge of this page with washi tape, and I first chose this grid one but decided to use a more purple one with a gingham pattern so it would stand out from the washi that I'm going to be adding behind the dot stars. To finish off this spread, I added these simple lines and some gold sparkles near the flower. Now we are making my trackers, and I started off by cutting the dot star again, but left that out of the video as you saw me doing that earlier. And this video was getting long anyway. I wrote the header in the center and drew some cute envelopes next to it. I'm using a pigma micron in size 01, and I also added some details with a 003. By the way, the little candle actually burned all the way at this point and I had to light a new one. I also realized that this candle doesn't look very aesthetic in this angle, so maybe I will get a different one for my next video. I've seen so many pretty bubble candles and I would love to buy one for myself. Anyway, I'm now writing out the habits I'm keeping track of in February. There's always a few habits that I struggle with, but I still write them in the list because I'm hopeful that I will actually end up doing them someday. One of those habits is reading, and I'm actually very proud that I managed to read one book in January after not reading in months. I read Me Before You and I really liked that book even though it made me cry a little bit. I've also listened to a few audiobooks, but I don't keep track of that. Maybe I could actually add that to my habit tracker in March. On the bottom of this spread I made my mood tracker. I first thought about making another envelope and setting up the tracker in a paper I could put inside the envelope. The habit tracker was taking too much space though, so I ended up using the same layout as I did in January. Maybe I will do that envelope idea in some other setup. I felt like the word stressed was a little bit too close to the washi tape, so I went over it with a white gel pen and later wrote the word again with a smaller font. Then I drew the outlines of the trackers with thinner side of the Tombow brush pen. I think this color goes well together with the washi tapes. If I had used a pink or purple, it would have probably looked a little bit too pink or red. Do you usually use colors when you draw lines in your bullet journal? I often do, as they look a little bit softer than the black pen. Now I'm adding the final details to the spread. I colored in the envelope illustration and used the same colors as I did in the previous spreads. I also added some white highlights to make the doodle pop a little bit. I wanted to try out something different with this spread and decided to add this textured white paper for the mood tracker header. I first thought about making a collage of different kinds of paper, but I felt like there wasn't enough space for that. For some reason, tearing paper and making collages makes me nervous, so I decided to just cut the paper instead. Then I used some typewriter stamps to write the header, because writing with pen would have been probably a bit difficult with this paper texture. Next I'm making my monthly review page. I started off by erasing some pencil marks and I accidentally wrinkled the paper while doing that, so the page ripped a little bit. Don't you hate when this happens? This actually made me a little sad because you can't really fix the wrinkled paper. Anyway, I tried to get over it and kept going with this setup. I added the same washi tape on the side as I did on my quote page. Then I started writing out the header for my weekly thoughts page. I'm actually really happy how this spread turned out, as I tried some new things with this layout and you will see that soon. I had this idea that I would make a little pocket where I can place some pieces of paper for my notes. This pocket was really easy to do and not as complicated as the envelope. As you can see, I just folded each side of the paper so I can glue it down to my notebook. I again cut out the excess so it would be easier to fold and wouldn't make my journal very chunky. I got this idea from Bujo for treats, and you should definitely go check out her account. I think she has a YouTube channel as well, so I will link that down below too. Now I'm just attaching the pocket to my journal and making sure that I didn't accidentally glue it shut. After that, I started preparing the paper notes I will put inside the pocket. I try to choose papers that wouldn't have too much texture, so it will be easier to write in those. By the way, I don't use a fine liner for filling in my bullet journal because the tip of the pen gets worn out a lot quicker and I have quite a heavy hand when I'm writing. I use a Muji gel pen instead, and I have found that I don't have to buy new fine liners as often anymore. After I had cut the paper notes, I made sure that they would fit inside the pocket. Then I started to write the weeks in them, so I know which paper I need to write my thoughts after each week. I'm using the typewriter stamps again because I thought they would look more interesting, and I also wanted to try out new things. By the way, you could also add pictures to this pocket if you would like to, and that way you can store some memories in this spread along with the weekly thoughts. I don't own a printer, so I have never added photos to my bullet journal, but I'm actually going to buy a printer soon so I can experiment with making stickers. Now I have to go to my dad's office if I want to print something, and that has made the designing process a bit more complicated. Maybe I will add more photos to my bullet journal as well when I have a printer at home. Anyway, I'm now making my monthly review page, and I thought I would make it look a little bit different by using the stamps again. Using stamps directly in your journal was actually a bit hard, as it's hard to know how much space they will take and you can't really sketch anything beforehand. I was definitely out of my comfort zone while doing this, and I don't know if I like how these boxes turn out because I had hard time fitting the words inside. I think it was a good learning experience and a good way to let go of the perfectionism because I couldn't fully control how these headers will turn out. It also made me realize that I'm a bit of a control freak, at least when it comes to my bullet journal. I would love to hear if you use stamps and if you have any tips on how to use them. With my short experience with them, I feel like it's easier to use the writing stamps if you put them on separate pieces of paper and not directly in your journal. I thought the little pocket was looking a little bit too simple, so I drew a leaf doodle in it with my Uniball Signo pen. Then I started making an envelope where I can place my thoughts and reflections of the month. Those can sometimes be very personal, so hiding them in this envelope felt like a good idea. I always write in Finnish when I'm filling in my bullet journal, as that's my first language. I know most of you wouldn't understand it anyway, but sharing after the pen spread still feels very vulnerable in some way. Do you ever read what someone has written in their bullet journal if they share their after the pen photos? I'm just curious, and if you do, I don't see anything wrong with that. After all, the person who posted it probably made sure that there wasn't anything too private or personal. Anyway, I struggled a little bit with this envelope because I had to fit it in the bottom of the spread in a way that I would still be able to write my favorites of the month above it. I had to fold the envelope twice in some places, and you can definitely see the extra fold, which bothered me a little bit. I will cover it up later though, so you can see that. I made some final adjustments to the envelope by cutting out some pieces, and after I was happy with it, I glued it into my notebook. When I had attached the envelope to my journal, I added a little line to separate my favorites of the month from the to improve section. Then I tore a little piece of textured white paper I used earlier, and this was actually a bit difficult because the paper had a lot of texture. I know I said earlier that I don't like tearing paper because it makes me nervous, but tearing just a little piece to decorate the envelope felt more comfortable. I also cut out a little heart from the washi tape and added that to the envelope so it would stay closed. After the envelope was ready, I tore some paper from an old notebook and added that inside so I can write my monthly thoughts there. Now we are setting up the last spread of this video, which is the first weekly spread of the month, as always. If you would like to see the rest of my February weeklies, make sure to follow me on Instagram or TikTok as I post those there. I've been thinking about making a YouTube video of my weekly spreads, but one thing that is stopping me is that I like to set them up week by week. That way I can make sure that the weekly spreads fit my needs. I also like to film reels, and filming those at the same time as I'm filming a YouTube video sounds a bit of a challenge. I would love to hear if you'd like to see a weekly spreads video though, as I can definitely make it happen if you are interested in seeing that. For this weekly spread I drew a little envelope and some plant doodles. I also made a mini calendar on the top left corner, as this is a must-have for me because it helps with getting the dates right on your weekly spread and also seeing how fast the month is going by. I tried a new layout for this weekly and drew 12 by 12 boxes for each day of the week. I have used boxes of this size, but I have never left a column on the right side like I did here. Then I colored the top of the boxes with the same color that I used for the outlines, and this was a Tombow dual brush pen in the shade 992. On the empty column I made a section for notes. I also decided to use capital printed lettering for the days of the week, just for a change, as I usually write them in cursive. I decided to add a little flip note to the notes section. I again chose a paper with quite a smooth texture, so it would be easier to write in. Once I had cut out the paper, I attached it to my journal with washi tape. I actually ended up cutting the washi tape a little bit thinner because it looked a little bit too thick with the flip note. Under the notes I made a section for highlights of the week. I thought this would be a nice way to notice the small good things that happened during the week. I remembered that I had this mail washi tape from the Washi Tape Shop that would be perfect for this spread, so I cut out a little piece of it for the decorations. Next I started coloring in the letter and the envelope doodles on the top of the page. Here you can see the details a little bit better. I colored in the outlines of the envelopes where I had drawn the dashed lines. I added some shadow to the letter with a light grey Tombow dual brush pen, which you can barely see, but I added another layer a little bit later to give it some depth. I also went over the envelope borders again with the dashed line, and I think this made the envelopes look a lot cuter. I think these doodles were probably my favorites I drew in this setup, and that's probably because I had already had some time to practice drawing in envelopes. To finish off this illustration, I added some white highlights and golden sparkles. Because I don't know when to stop and I felt like the spread was missing something, I decided to add the mail washi tape again for the final details. Washi tapes from the Washi Tape Shop actually come with packing paper, so it's really easy to cut them a bit smaller and use them kind of like stickers. Here I'm just playing around with the smaller pieces I cut out and seeing which would fit the spread the best. I like how you can move the washi tape around to find the right place for it. Doing this with stickers could be more difficult, for example, because they stick to the paper in a way that it's hard to move afterwards. I, for example, replaced this piece of washi tape 4 times because I couldn't find a right place for it on the first try. And now it's time for the final flip through of my February 2022 bullet journal theme. I really like how this turned out, and it was fun to try out new things with this theme. I know it probably doesn't look that different to you, as I didn't change the way I did my doodles, but the process was definitely a lot different to me. I hope you enjoyed watching me experiment with different papers and also the stamps. I would love to hear which spread was your favorite. I think mine was this weekly thoughts and monthly review page because I really like how the pocket and the envelope turned out, and I'm so excited to start using them. Remember to like this video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a pen emoji in the comments if you are still here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!